Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Local Authors with Kameel Nasr. I am Kameel Nasr, and I have a great pleasure of having Kate Flora with us. And Kate, tell us a little about yourself. You're a writer, right?
I am, but I used to be a lawyer. Before I became a writer, I was a lawyer. And I
see.
had kids and decided to give up. But actually, being a lawyer made me very curious about good and evil and what makes people behave the way they do.
Yeah, I see. Well, I got to start with a disclosure, okay? For the first time I started writing fiction, I was having problems with my writing. I didn't know what to do. And so I started reading people who edited manuscripts, and I started reading their works. I read your work, and so I thought you were really good, so I went to you immediately because I really like your writing. So I'm prejudiced about your writing. I'm not going to give you probably any really hard questions as I should, but I really like your writing.
Well, that's very nice of you. I like your writing too. So, this is the Mutual Admiration Society.
So tell us now, you write a lot about police.
I do.
Yeah.
I didn't start out that way, but yeah.
Well, how did you start?
Well, I started out writing what we call the Nancy Drew generation comes of age, which are women writers writing strong women detective characters.
Oh, that's right.
It's,
yes,
so directly, from the Nancy Drew lineage. And what we wanted to do, even though we didn't talk to each other, what we were all setting out to do was to write women who rescue themselves, as opposed to the strong, brawny man who jumps out of the closet and says, "I'll save you." So that's where it all began.
Well, and then you wrote nonfiction too.
Well, the nonfiction came as a result of writing police fiction.
True crime.
The true crime came. So I was writing strong women. I was writing Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
And then, as happens to writers all the time, my publisher dropped the series. So I thought I was going to write, a book for 9 months and then spend 3 months on the road. And that didn't happen. Suddenly I was without a publisher and deeply depressed. And I thought, well, there are several ways I could go. I could go back to practicing law. I could throw myself in front of a moving car, or I could try something different. And what I realized was that I had spent a huge amount of time in order to, what's the right word, credibly write crime fiction, talking to cops.
Yes.
So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to write cops as my main characters?
Yeah, right. And you really know about cops, right? You know what they do. Have you ridden around in police cars? What's it like?
Well, the first time I did a ride along, there's a long backstory about how I got into the car in the first place. But having been sent by my mentor, who was a police lieutenant, to go for a ride along, he said, "They don't like you. They don't want you there. So just basically shut up and do your best to be invisible." So I'm shut up and doing my best to be invisible, except, of course, that I'm a crime writer and I've got a cop. And so I'm saying things like, "We're driving down the street. I know what I see, but tell me what you see." And they would start the narrative. This is the house where such and such happened.
Right.
And this is the house where they found the body in the basement. And this is the house where the guy killed his girlfriend and ran down the street and shot himself. And, so pretty soon, it's not simply sitting there shutting up. It's like realizing that to them, the city is a map of crime in the same way it might be a map of, my friend's cousin lives in this house.
Yeah.
So that was really, really fascinating.
Yeah. So I have to tell you something. I'm a bicyclist, and the cops around here are really good to bicyclists. I don't think it was the case all the time. And once I rode with an ex-cop, a retired cop, and every time he'd see a policeman, he'd say, wave hello to them. Yeah. And I thought that was a really good thing to do. So I do the same. But at the same time, I see a lot of cops directing traffic. And I think, well, they're really so well trained now. Most cops have to go to a four-year college, right? Why are they directing traffic? I could direct traffic.
Well, because they have to direct traffic. A cop will tell you, we could spend the whole time here just talking about cops. A cop will tell you that, when they go out, you never know what you're going to be doing. You don't know whether you're going to be stopping a crime. You don't know whether you're going to be in a car chase. You don't know whether you're going to be helping a little old lady across the street. You don't know whether you're going to be directing traffic in the rain. Mm-hmm. You do what has to be done, and they're very good at that.
Yeah.
I mean, they may be a little grouchy sometimes, which when we do something stupid, we might find them being a little less friendly to us than you have with your bicycle cops. But yeah.
So let's talk about your Joe Burgess series.
Okay.
Do you have a copy?
I don't. You had a copy.
I had a copy. What did I do with it?
I think you left it in your bag. It doesn't matter.
It's a great series. Yeah. So that you came out with your fifth one, was it?
Right.
And what was that one called again?
It's called Led Astray.
Yeah, yeah.
It actually had a beautiful title, which they shortened to go fit on the cover. The cover of the book when I was writing it was "And Led Them Thus Astray," because I love the sort of the poetry of it, and I like titles that actually say something about what you're doing in a book.
Right.
And the book before that was called "And Grant You Peace."
Yeah. Now the lead character. And in fact, most of the police are kind of macho. Would you say that's?
I don't see them. I mean, I think Burgess is a cop, and he is. He's a cop's cop. He's not so much macho as he is just kind of we're on cable television, so he's hard boiled.
Hard boiled. Okay.
But we've got the trio. We've got a trio of cops that are his investigative team. So you've got Joe Burgess, who's 50-something, and he's seen it all, and he's world weary and so forth. And then you've got Terry Kyle, who's kind of actually colder and fiercer, who lives in terror. They both live in terror of becoming their fathers. And then you've got the kid, Stan, who's kind of a horn dog. He's kind of he's always after girls, and his judgment isn't perhaps as finely honed.
Would you call it a horn dog? I never heard that expression
I heard that
before.
expression while writing a book. This is where I learned all my language. I was a very proper woman until I started hanging out with cops.
Hanging out with cops.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but so there you go into their backgrounds, their family, and you feel you get to know them as people. They're not. They're regular people, right? They're regular family guys.
They are and they aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that another writer and I were talking about this one day, and his character is a reporter, and we were talking about the conflict or the tension that your character gets from having what's called a higher calling. Joe Burgess's job is to serve and protect, and he works on homicides and battered children and things like that. So he has a huge job to do, and sort of a purpose in life in doing his job. And his challenge, as it is, I think, for many police officers, is trying to balance work and life. And that family.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But where the characters you get, are they based on real life? No.
One of the things that I think is really amusing is that when I came out with the first Joe Burgess book, and I had friends in the Portland, Maine Police Department, which is where Joe Burgess works in his imaginary job, people were always saying, "Oh, I know who that is. I know who that is. I know who that is." But I don't base my characters on real people.
Yeah.
I base my characters on sort of like the sense that they're out there and in the ether somewhere, and it's our job as writers to go find them and learn about them.
Yeah, but you see someone on the street and you get some ideas that you merge the characters, no? Or does it just come totally out of the
I always say
imagination?
the characters are everything that you've experienced in life and everything that you've read.
Yeah.
They're cops, so they have cop behaviors that I've learned from hanging around with cops. I did get an incredible compliment. I think it was on the third Joe Burgess book, who said about me that he thought that I understood the cop's life and the cop's psyche better than many police officers did themselves, which is just, that's a really lovely thing to have somebody say. Because I worked very hard at it.
Cops are special people in our society. They have powers that we give them special powers, so they can say, you stand over there, you stop your car over here. We do give them special powers to do things. I want to talk a little about your nonfiction and fiction and how that merges.
Okay.
Can you talk a little about that? You know, you started as an attorney and then went to fiction, and so you're dealing with both of them, right?
Well, the way that the nonfiction came about was that I had, developed this source inside the Portland Police Department, who was the person that I would go to with questions, because writers have a million questions, and if you're writing a world that's not your world, you want to get the details as authentic as you can. So I go and talk to him, and then he had a real murder that happened.
Yeah.
And he and I, our friendship was based in part on the fact that he could tell me about cop world, and he wanted to write so I could tell him about writing world.
Yes.
And so he wanted to write this book about this murder.
Mm-hmm.
And he had no idea how to write a book. So I said, I'll coach you. And then I listened to him complain for a while. And then one day it was very clear that he'd never write the book. And I said, let's write the book together. And I had no idea how to, I don't collaborate. Writers are solitary.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to write nonfiction. But to help him write this book, basically, I started writing true crime.
Oh, I see. So, your books are based in Maine, right? Are all your books based in Maine?
Well, one of the true crimes is actually based in Miramichi, New Brunswick, up in Canada. And my female character, Thea, started here in Massachusetts,
right?
And she's recently moved to Maine, so she's from away, as we say up there.
Yeah, I love Thea.
I love Thea too. I just love her. I'm trying to write another Thea.
Is that the series that got dropped by the public? I see.
Exactly.
I see. Well, I hope you can write that again.
Well, there's another book all ready to go, and then I'm writing another one right now. So
are you doing another Joe Burgess book?
Well, I don't know. Here's what happened with Joe Burgess. My plan with the Burgess series was to write a quartet. I was going to write the 4 seasons. So I started, with that icy February night, or, where they find the body in the Mercedes, and he's dead. And then I wrote one that takes place with a body in a park on a hot, stinking, miserable July day.
Yeah.
And then I did Fall, which was called Redemption.
Interesting.
And
interesting.
then the series, it's Playing God and The Angel of Knowlton Park and Redemption and then Grant You Peace.
Oh,
and you can sort of see that there's a pattern in the titles.
Yeah.
And so it was the seasons, and it was sort of religious, and and it was a beautiful thing, and it was done. But people kept saying to me, we love Joe Burgess.
Yeah.
When are you going to write another Joe Burgess?
So this last one is about a cop killer. This starts with the crime. A policeman is killed and 2 others are wounded. And then in the series of the book, other cops are targeted, including Joe, right? Yeah. And it's a very interesting piece of writing. I love listening to it. So you started off, got tired of being an attorney? You wanted something?
No, I was happy being an attorney, but I didn't find that being at the beck and call of judges and courtrooms and court schedules worked very well when my husband was also an attorney at the beck and call, and we had 2 small children. So I decided that I would stay home. And of course, the minute that I decided I'd stay home, I said, but I've always had a job. What am I going to do? And then I thought, but like everybody else, I'd always wanted to write.
Yeah.
So I said, well, why not try a book?
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book, which is in the drawer. And I wrote another book, which I actually describe my first 3 efforts at writing fiction as books that are in a safe, which is wrapped in cement and chains and is at the bottom of the sea. And then I sold my 4th one.
Yeah. Everybody writes the first book. Everybody can trash, right? You have to do it for a while. You're very active in the writing community, helping other writers. You organize. Were you the head of the Sisters of Crime at one time?
I was both president of the local chapter and president of the international chapter.
I see you organizing so many events.
I'm pulling way back from that.
Are you?
I've been everybody's mother for a very long time. And while I love all you little ducklings, sometimes I need some time off.
Well, again, I want to thank you for your work that you did with my first book, because I was writing nonfiction and fine, and fiction is entirely different thing, entirely different kind of writing, you know. Yeah. And what's your? Are you an outliner or no? You just
well, no, that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
I'm an outliner, but I don't write it down on paper.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. There's two kind of basic writers. There's people who outline everything and fill in the gaps, and then people who just like me who
set
just
off and don't know what's going to happen in the next chapter. No,
Yeah.
I don't do it that way. I do what I call cooking, which is a little bit different, which is a couple of months of getting ready to write the book. I start thinking, you know, the book usually grows from some idea, something that's going to happen. And then I take that and I, I wander around saying, who is the person who's in the situation? Who is the victim and why were they killed?
Yeah.
Who would want them killed? Who else might have wanted them killed? Who will be my alternative suspects? What kinds of things am I going to place at the crime scene? Or, what kind of clues are people going to divulge over the course of the investigation, and how is the book going to end?
Right.
And I do all of that here before I start writing.
I see.
And then it will change completely, but I have done it. I've done my plotting.
Yeah. And then people who write, there's a really active writers community here in the Boston area.
Okay.
What do you think? Is it the colleges that are around here, the intellectual stimuli? It seems to be a really big number of writers, both fiction, nonfiction, of course. What do you think, accounts for it?
I think Boston has a literary tradition.
Yeah.
I think there's always been a sense of, in Boston we write, in Boston we are educated, in Boston we,
and in
in
New
a way
England,
that's different from, and in New England, and in a way that seems to be different
and
from
in New
other parts
England,
of the
it's
country.
we have a lot of libraries all over the place, including the Boston Public Library, which I think is the first library, 1850, and I love it there, and other places, libraries are very important, literacy is very important, so I think that's a real positive thing for. Do you encourage people to write?
Do I encourage people to write?
People who are not writers.
I don't know. I teach writing.
Yeah.
I coach writing. I'm always getting somebody's manuscript who's a friend who needs some help, or and then there are the paying customers who are clients, but I guess I really care about the craft very deeply. I don't know if people would read my books and say she cares about the craft very deeply, but I do. I think a lot about structure, and I think a lot about, how to make things feel authentic, and how to create tension through the shaping of the narrative. And, there's a lot of things that I do that I think, I care about doing it myself, but I also care about other people doing it.
Yeah.
So that if somebody gives me a book, they'll get it back red pencils to death.
I know that.
And very often what happens is that I will, someone will give me a book and I will read and I will tell them what I think, and they will basically either not speak to me again for about 2 years, or they will send me an email immediately which says they hate me. And I'm very used to that. And then usually what happens is that then they will go back and read it again, and they will say, "Oh my goodness."
What I did was I just put it aside for a while and thought about it, and then I went back to it with some good ideas. There's not for a lot of writers, there's not much money in it, right? You have to do it for love.
Well, and most writers also teach. Or they do, or they have a day job. And we say to aspiring writers, and we hate to say it, but it's truth. And you don't want to tell people too much truth. But one of the truths is, don't quit your day job or have a partner with benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it takes a long time. Sue Grafton says that it takes 5 years. There's no magic and there are no shortcuts, and it takes at least 5 years before you can hope to make a living. And I think it's worse now than it was when I started 25 years ago.
Because there are a lot more writers out there.
Because publishers have the publishing industry has consolidated,
Yes,
but also
yes.
they've discovered that they can exploit writers in a way that they didn't.
What do you think the future of publishing is with ebooks? You know, a few years ago, everybody thought there weren't going to be any more hard books around. What do you think's the future?
I don't have a real clear read on that. I think that if you look at, what's being written about the publishing industry, they'll say ebook sales are down and physical book sales are up.
Yes.
I think that people still like books.
People still read. You know, this is a fallacy that the young generations don't read. But
and everywhere you go, even if if I don't happen to love ebooks, I love the fact that as a writer with a long backlist, I have 5 Burgesses and 8 Theas, or 7 Theas and an 8th about to come out, and then several. I've got 17 books.
Yeah.
So if my 17 books can stay in print through the magic of the ebook, that's great for me. Because it used to be that they just disappeared, and they were gone, and that's silly. Because if you read, if you're in our world and you read a series or you write a series, people want to start with the first book. So,
So I mean, I think I could speak for a lot of people. I had an ebook reader, and I thought that was great. You buy books for $2.99 or something like that, and then I really missed. And just about all my reading now is with a hardcover or paperback book, because I just like thumb through the book and the
there's
feel
something
of
about
it.
And I think that also our brains perceive things differently on the screen. That's just my own theory, but anyway.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the writing community here, since you're a central figure.
Well, I'm not a central figure. I have been a central figure in days past, but I think that it is true that if you wanted to be a mystery writer in Massachusetts, or if you wanted to be a mystery writer in New England, you have access to so many wonderful places to get support. One is Mystery Writers of America, which is, an organization for published writers, but it also has associate members, and they do a tremendous amount to educating writers and doing great programs, often about crime, or they'll get a detective or a crime scene analyst or someone in to teach writers how to do that right. My particular area is Sisters in Crime, which is an organization which was founded 30 years ago. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year.
I'm happy to say that Sisters in Crime also has...
we have brothers, absolutely.
Yes.
But it was formed because the publishing business was not putting dollars and energy behind women's books.
Right.
Because they thought that women's books were only bought and read by women with their leftover pin money, so that there was no sense in advertising, there was no sense in marketing to women, because they weren't a market. They buy, I think, 85% of books or something, but they weren't a market then. So women's books were...
No, I don't think it's 85%.
It's a big number. Anyway, it might not be quite that many, because many of the books that men read are also bought by women.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of the effects of that publishers ignoring women's contributions or women's writing was that women didn't get book reviewed because they didn't make review copies and they didn't send them out. So women were writing, when Sisters in Crime started, about 30% of the crime fiction.
Yeah.
And they were getting reviews in the, less than 10%.
Yeah, we're speaking with Flora, great writer and a mystery writer, written 17 books.
17.
Is that included?
That's 17 published.
Yeah, that includes the nonfiction.
Yeah, it does, and it also includes the book that's in the pipeline to come out in the fall, I think. That may be 18. After a while, I get a little confused.
Is there going to be another Joe Burgess?
Yeah, there is. I have a plot for it. I'm doing that cooking thing I told you about, where instead of carrying it around, I've got the opening scene, and I know, sort of what the story's about. But
do you keep a notebook and write things down? It's all in your head?
Well, I'm getting older now. It's harder to hold anything in my head, Kameel.
I get some great ideas, and if I don't write them down, they're gone.
It's terrible. You should see. I use my phone now instead of a brain, and I have all of these weird things in my phone, and I open it up and say, what was that about? Because that'll be like 3 words. You know.
And then, do you have a certain time that you write? You sit for 8 to 10 in the morning. Do you have a certain number of words you want to complete?
I like to write 1,000 words a day.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of my goal. And right now I've been something of a slacker. But I turned in a book, a nonfiction book in November that was really, really hard. That was like a 1.5-year project. And so then I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to take some time off. Taking some time off means that I'm only like 43,000 words into the new Thea. And I have...
And that's about like 70,000 words, something like that?
They're probably 80 to 85, so it's halfway. And then I have the Burgess plot cooking, and I have 1, 2, 3 books that need to be rewritten. And
I just want to ask you, a lot of your books are based in Maine.
Yeah.
Is there more crime in Maine?
No, we love the fact that, in fact, last year we were going to do a conference that turned out not to come off, but we had the Attorney General coming, and her sort of her title was sort of like
the Maine Attorney General.
Yeah, the Maine Attorney General, talking about a lot of crime writing a lot of crime in a low crime state, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's a great deal more murder in Portland in my books and in my colleagues' books than there is in Portland.
Oh, I see. Yeah. There's a lot of murders around here in the Boston area.
Yeah, but you want a whodunit.
Yeah.
I mean, the vast majority of murders are either, sort of a gang
in the
thing, a robbery
English
thing,
countryside,
or
yes.
they're domestics or they're drug related, or they're money related. But what we want to write is something that's going to be a little bit more of a brain teaser for you.
Yeah.
It's not going to be obvious that it was, the guy that it was his brother.
Right. It's something that you want to rationally come up with the plot, and you put little elements in it. Yeah.
And I think it's different when I write, amateur detectives like Thea, where, she doesn't have access to the crime scene necessarily. She doesn't have access necessarily to the crime lab, to, the detectives. She has to, do an end run. She has to figure it out through sort of personality and people she knows. Whereas Burgess's books, because
we have to finish now. We're in our last seconds.
That's too bad.
That's too bad. Kate, Flora, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Oh, it's so nice of you to have me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.